New information in the mystery aboard a Carnival cruise ship. For the first time, we're seeing the death certificate for 18-year-old Anna Kepner. We'll go into the new information that we're reportedly learning from that document, plus what her grandparents say surveillance video shows in the final hours of the varsity cheerleader's life, as her family says her 16-year-old stepbrother is a suspect in her death. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, guys, real quick before we start this episode of On the Case, which is one of the most watched shows on YouTube, I need to talk about America's largest personal injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan. They're a firm of more than 1,000 attorneys, and they've recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. And in just the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at fortothepeople.com/OTC. You can also scan the QR code on your screen or click the link below. There are some conflicting stories when it comes to what Anna Kepner's relationship was like with her stepbrother, a boy whose family says that he is a suspect in her death. Now, Kepner's death is now reportedly a homicide, according to ABC News. That outlet has said that her family told them that she died of a bar hold, someone reportedly putting their arm across her neck, strangling her to death. Now, that person, according to her own family, may be her 16-year-old stepbrother. That boy is the biological son of Anna's stepmom, whose name is Chantel Hudson, also now Chantel Kepner, because she is married to Anna's biological dad. Now, Anna's grandparents say there were a total of 9 family members on this Carnival cruise on the ship the Horizon, which is a 4,000 passenger ship that left Miami for a 6-day cruise to multiple stops in the Caribbean. Her grandparents said that the cruise, it was supposed to be a new tradition for this blended family that was brought together by Anna's dad and Anna's stepmom. Now, one of the stepmom's kids is a 16-year-old boy. He's a minor, so we're not naming him, and if he's ever charged in this case, if he's ever tried as an adult, that could change. I'm going to talk about how all of that could happen in just a moment, how likely it would be if there are charges filed in this case, and at the time of this recording, charges haven't been filed, but how likely would it be if a minor's charged that they would be tried as an adult? Now, just a reminder, as we do get into the reported details of this story, that the FBI hasn't really said a word publicly beyond confirming that they are investigating a death on board the cruise ship. Now, here's the new information that we do have. You're taking a look, reportedly, at the death certificate for Anna Kepner. This was obtained by Fox News. It does not list her cause of death, but it says that her body has been cremated. Now, her memorial service was held last week in Titusville, Florida, which is east of Orlando. That is where Anna Kepner grew up. Now, it is believed that Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother is a suspect because that information came out of his parents' attorney's mouth.
The older child, who's approximately 16 years of age, is a suspect in the death of the stepchild, an 18-year-old daughter that was in the same room.
Now, that's a moment from a custody hearing in Florida involving Kepner's stepmom and her ex-husband. This hearing, this custody dispute that's been going on for a year, is not related to Anna Kepner's death, but there's been information coming out of that hearing related to her death. The attorney for the stepmom's ex-husband said that he was told that the 16-year-old is a suspect in Kepner's case. Now, in their ABC News interview, Anna Kepner's grandparents also said for the first time what the 16-year-old reportedly told them after Anna's body was found on board the ship. Now, as far as how the final days of Anna's life played out, according to family members, it went something like this. On November 6th, which is one of the final days that this cruise was still out on the water, Anna was not feeling well. Her grandparents said. She apparently had braces, they were bothering her, so she called it an early night. Now that brings us to November 7th. The next day, the Kepners get up for breakfast, everybody gets together, but Anna didn't show. Her grandfather said he actually was getting bingo cards, and that's when he heard over the loudspeaker that there was a medical emergency announcement, and they said the room number. And he said his heart kind of had that moment because The room number is one that he recognized. Now, around 11 o'clock that morning, the Daily Mail says a maid entered Anna's stateroom, and that's when the horrifying discovery was made. Anna's body allegedly was found wrapped in a blanket, covered over with life jackets, stuffed under a bed. ABC News said that she had been strangled. An arm allegedly across her neck had killed her. Now, there was reportedly no evidence of sexual assault, and there also is no evidence of drugs or alcohol in her system, according to this ABC News report. The ship returned to Miami on November 8th. Kepner's body was taken off of the ship. It was transported to the medical examiner's office in Miami-Dade County. This is video of her body being taken off of the ship. It was shot by WSVN TV reporter Sheldon Fox. Now, according to that death certificate per Fox News, Kepner's date of death is listed as November 7th. Now, there is a separate death certificate that ABC News says that they have obtained from a family member of Anna Kepner that has a date of injury listed as November 6th. Now again, investigators haven't provided the public with a timeline of Anna Kepner's death. Now, what Anna's relationship was with her stepbrother, that seems to be up for debate. Now, the dad of her ex-boyfriend told Inside Edition that the stepbrother was, quote, obsessed with Anna, that she was scared of him, quote, because he always carried around a big knife. He also said that his son once saw the stepbrother go into Kepner's room during a FaceTime call, quote, when she was sleeping and get on top of her, end quote. And he also said, quote, he's like infatuated, attracted to her like crazy. He always wanted to date her. Now, the dad said all of this to Inside Edition. Now, the ex-boyfriend also told that media outlet that Anna was so afraid of her stepbrother that she actually slept at friends' houses just to get away from the kid. That narrative, it's concerning, but it's very different from how Anna's grandparents have characterized her relationship with her 16-year-old stepbrother. Now, those grandparents told ABC News that Anna and the stepbrother, they had a real brother-sister type relationship, that it went really well. In fact, they characterized them as two peas in a pod. On this cruise, Anna was reportedly sharing a room with that stepbrother. And according to what Anna's ex-boyfriend told Inside Edition, Anna's biological brother, who was also on the cruise, he had tried to get into the stateroom that they were all staying in, but it was locked. Anna's brother says that Anna and the stepbrother, that they were inside that room when it was locked. And according to Inside Edition, he could hear yelling, including the stepbrother, saying something along the lines of, quote, shut the hell up. He also says that he heard some banging in that room. Now, the grandparents told ABC News that investigators say the only person who was seen going into that stateroom where Anna was found dead was the stepbrother. Now, Anna's grandparents say that everyone, every member of the family, was questioned after the girl's body was found. The stepson reportedly said that he doesn't remember the details of what happened inside of the room. And according to ABC, the 16-year-old said, quote, in his own words, says he does not remember what happened. That is according to Anna's grandma. She told ABC News she actually believes the boy, period. Now, she also says the boy was hospitalized for a psychiatric evaluation once the ship returned to port.
December 1st at 9 a.m.?
Can I speak? He has a psychiatrist appointment on December 1st.
Ma'am, just a second. Hold on. I want you to be able to talk with your attorney before you speak. If she says it's okay for you to speak, okay. I'm okay with that, but I think you need to run that by her first.
Now, another moment from that separate custody hearing related to Anna's stepmom is when she spoke up about the boy receiving mental health treatment, that he had a psychiatrist appointment on the calendar. Now, at the time of this recording, it is still unclear if anyone's been charged in connection to Kepner's death. The FBI has not said much. We've been unable to confirm the details that have been reported in the media about Anna's death because the FBI has not said anything beyond the fact that they are investigating the case. And to be clear, we're not naming this 16-year-old boy the stepbrother of Anna Kepner because he is a minor. We're not showing you his picture either. But if he is charged, if his name is released, if he is tried as an adult, all of that could change and we can dive more into what we know about him. We did reach out to Carnival Cruise Lines for a statement. They have not said much either, beyond going, quote, the death of a guest traveling on the Carnival Horizon voyage that returned to Port Miami on Saturday morning, November 8th, is being investigated by the FBI. Since this is an ongoing matter under the jurisdiction of law enforcement, it is up to the FBI's Miami Public Affairs Office to provide further details. Our focus is on supporting the family of our guest. The custody case involving Anna Kepner's stepmom is expected to next be in court on December 5th. Anna's biological dad could testify at that hearing. Anna's stepmom said that she would have to invoke potentially her Fifth Amendment rights if she were called to testify. Her attorney said in a previous hearing that she's been cleared of any wrongdoing. The FBI has not said anything about that. Joining us now is the former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. Always great to have you on Law and Crime, especially this one happening not too far down the way from where you are in Miami. For a lot of people, I think, where you see the information that's coming out from the family, her cause of death, even the stepbrother's own dad's attorney saying that he's a suspect in this case. One of the questions, and I have it too, is just why is it taking the FBI so long, it seems, to actually charge someone in connection to Anna Kepner's death?
Chris, good to be with you. This kid is not going anywhere, and so the FBI realizes that there's no sense of super urgency because statute of limitations is not expiring. He's not flying out of the country and escaping. They know where he is. They've got their eyes on him, and they want to make sure they've got an airtight case. The most important thing is to get it done right, not to get it done fast. And once you make the arrest, then that speedy trial clock starts ticking. So they're getting all the evidence, even though it clearly points to just one person here. And if you're going to commit a crime, if you do it on a cruise ship, you got to be really stupid, because a cruise ship may be one of the worst places because there are thousands of potential witnesses on that ship. You're in a tight, confined space. You've got surveillance cameras everywhere. You've got access cards where people know where you're going. So I think this thing is headed towards an arrest, although I can't say exactly when.
Because even the grandparents, when they spoke to ABC News, they said that surveillance video only shows one other person going into that stateroom, and it was the 16-year-old stepbrother of Anna Kepner. For as many cameras as there are on a Carnival cruise ship, there aren't cameras in the stateroom, so we don't know what the back and forth is that potentially happened that led to her death, though, according to ABC, that she died by strangulation. What type of evidence do you need as a prosecutor when you're putting together the story of what happened inside that room that you would need to make an arrest?
Well, you don't need motive to make an arrest, although jurors always want to know the why. So means, motive, opportunity are all important. But for a prosecutor, you just want the evidence that shows this is the person who did it. And unlike police, who only need probable cause to make an arrest, that's a really low burden. Prosecutors have a responsibility only to file charges when they have a good faith belief they can get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. So we're talking a much higher burden. So that's one reason why I think you haven't seen an arrest yet, because they just want to make sure they got the access cards. They want to know that he was the person who was entering the room late at night. There's surveillance video. They're looking for any witnesses. They were going to look for DNA and fingerprints on the body. They're going to look at everything. Also, I think that they want the cause of death. Now, there were reports that the medical examiner did rule it a homicide, and as far as the manner of death, by asphyxiation. That's also really important for prosecutors. They want to know for sure that it was a homicide, not a suicide, not an accident, and they also would like to know the manner of death, so it can only point to the person who was in the room with the victim at the time, and apparently there's only one person.
There was a report that came out from Fox News I saw. There was a report that came out that said that her body had been cremated because it's been turned over to the funeral home up in Titusville, Florida, and they had a memorial service last week. From an evidence standpoint, is that any sort of, I know this is kind of a morbid question, but now that the body, according to this report, no longer exists, like, is that an issue for prosecutors in figuring out this case?
Well, it's not ideal, but as long as the medical examiner was able to do a full review before the body was cremated, it is okay. The prosecutors can use that evidence. Now, where it could come into play is that the defense may make hay over it, say, we weren't given access to the body and it was cremated by the stepmother when we're representing the son here, and they could try to make a stink about it. But I think that because the medical examiner did his full review, this happens a lot where the bodies are cremated, and so defense lawyers can try to make a claim out of it, but I don't think that's their best argument. Ideally, you would have everyone get access to the body so that they could all do their tests, but that's not the real world. In the real world, things like this happen.
For this 16-year-old stepbrother of Anna Kepner, and he's, it was his own family who said that he was a suspect in her death, and then you have the grandparents laying out that he was the only one to go into the room where Anna Kepner was eventually found dead. He's 16 years old. If he is charged in connection to her death, whatever that charge may be, how likely is it that he would be tried as an adult?
Very likely. The decision, since this is federal court, is up to the prosecutor to make that proposal that it's adult court, not juvenile court, and then it's up to the judge to approve it. There's much more discretion in state court for prosecutors. The state court, if this were a state case, the prosecutor would say, okay, we're filing this in adult court. Less discretion for the judge. In federal court, the judge has more discretion. But in a case like this, where the potential defendant is 16 and there's a murder, it's almost certainly going to be in adult court, because if it's not, then the juvenile system only retains jurisdiction up to age 21. So you could prosecute him and you could have him incarcerated in a juvenile facility until 21, and then he walks free. That's not ideal in any circumstance. So he will most likely be prosecuted in adult court. He can get a blend of juvenile and adult sanctions, but adult court is very different than juvenile court. Adult court is based on punishment, whereas juvenile court is based on rehabilitation.
And if he's 16, I mean, what does the timeline look like? Is there a possibility that if he was, and we haven't even gotten to the point where he's been charged and if that happens, but let's just say a 16-year-old is charged with a very serious crime in connection to a death. What does the timeline look like in a federal system, in federal court to get the trial? Is there a possibility that he would actually be 18 at the time of the trial? Does that factor into a decision of whether or not someone could be charged in adult court?
Well, the age does matter, as far as if he were like 12 or 13 or 14, it would be different for the prosecutors and for the judge. But because he's 16 and this crime is as serious as it gets, that's all they need to know. It's very likely to be in adult court. Also, if it is in juvenile court, they have a speedy trial rule, which makes it very hard. If you're a juvenile, you've got to be brought to trial within 30 days. If you invoke speedy trial for an adult, you have a lot more time. You've got at least 70 days, and so there are so many advantages to prosecutors if this is an adult court, which it will be.
And for you as a former prosecutor, and I know again that this is in taking place in the federal system because it was on a cruise ship, but what are the conversations like between the prosecutor and the investigator, where they probably come to you and say, hey, we have enough to charge this person. What more would you need? What are those conversations like, the back and forth in these moments before an arrest is made?
This is the stuff behind the scenes that the public is largely unaware of. But sometimes you'll see it on TV shows where you have sometimes disputes where you'll have the cops say, all right, we got enough, we're going to make an arrest. And the prosecutor's like, do not make the arrest because we need more. And the cop's like, I've got enough for probable cause. And the prosecutor's like, no, we need more to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And so in the state system, we will send the cops a letter saying, I know that you have sent us this case, but we are rejecting it until you give us more information. Give me more video, a witness, DNA, something else. Now, the cops on their own could make a probable cause arrest. They could just arrest them instead of waiting for prosecutors. But then that will hurt the relationship between the two, because it makes life so much tougher for prosecutors when you've got a case now, the speedy trial clock is ticking, and you've got to do the investigation when it's eating into your trial prep time. You want the investigation to be done before you prep for trial. And so this is the give and take that happens all the time behind the scenes.
And when it comes to Anna Kepner's family, and every family is different, and if there's, divorce involved, blended families can get very complicated. But in this case, it seems like you have a lot of people and a lot of different narratives about what the relationship was between Anna Kepner and this 16-year-old stepbrother. The grandparents say they were two peas in a pod. Then you have Anna Kepner's ex-boyfriend saying that she was actually scared of him. You have this custody hearing that's been ongoing between Anna Kepner's stepmom and her ex-husband related to the 16-year-old. How does all of that impact an investigation into whether or not she is the victim of a homicide as what's being reported?
You know, I saw the comments, I think, from the grandparents about, yeah, two peas in a pod. We're a blended family, but no different than a real family, and everyone loves each other, and it's all, roses and peaches and stuff. But in reality, life gets in the way. I mean, in reality, it looks like there were issues here. The ex-boyfriend said that this stepbrother would act inappropriately around Anna and climbed on top of her one time when they were FaceTiming with each other, and there was real tension. And yet they were allowed to stay in the same room on this cruise ship, and then this happened. So there are going to be a lot of questions as to whether the stepmother here did something to enable activities and whether she crossed the line into criminal conduct. Did she obstruct justice? Did she become an accessory after the fact? And so I think perhaps one of the reasons why you see this investigation going slowly is because they're not just investigating the young man here, but also his mother and her involvement. And she seems to know that, which is why she did what she did in the family law hearing. She took the fifth, or she said she was going to take the fifth. So she was under the microscope as well. So this family dynamic is really important here because also jurors want to know the why. Even though motive is not an element in a murder case, jurors want to know, why'd you do it? Why did a 16-year-old kill his stepsister? And that is going to be important to flesh out.
Oh, and I know her attorney in this family hearing said she was cleared in that investigation, and we don't, know if that's true. We'll see, when it comes to the FBI in terms of the stepmom. But I also think if there were these concerns that it seems like people outside of the family dynamic had about the relationship between Anna and her stepbrother, where the ex-boyfriend clearly thought that there was something going on that was concerning in that relationship, and yet she is staying in the same stateroom as this 16-year-old. Is there any possibility that that becomes something that someone could be charged with if there's evidence that they had somewhat of a concerning relationship?
Yeah, it reminds me of the Madeline Soto case. That's the one out of Orlando. I know that you had followed as well, where the mother allowed the sleazy boyfriend to sleep in the same bed as the underage daughter. Here, if the mother knew that there were issues between the two and there was attempted sexual assault and yet allowed them to stay in the same room together and made them stay in the same room together, could that mother be charged? Yes, that's why even though the lawyer says there's no there, I don't think that the cops are just going to exclude someone that quickly, especially as the evidence continues to come in. So will the mother ever be charged? I don't know. The mother in the Madeline Soto case was never charged, but I do think it's worth looking at, and I'm sure the cops are.
And then just lastly, I think of this interview that the grandparents gave to ABC News. And as someone in the media, I like getting exclusive interviews. That's, part of our job to find information and help tell the story. But I think of the FBI and how quiet they've been. And then there's that moment that, hey, the grandparents just spoke to ABC and they say that the stepson told them he doesn't remember anything that happened inside of the room. And I also think potentially for a defense, if it goes that direction, that's now out in the media that he apparently told family members that he didn't remember what happened. What do you make of that? And then I guess as a prosecutor, former prosecutor, and you're, for someone who's an FBI agent, what is that moment like when you look at your phone and you realize that the people who maybe interviewed, maybe pass some information along because they're a family that's grieving, ends up going to the media and gives this interview?
The FBI hates that because they want to keep everything buttoned up. They're not talking, and when this is out in the media, then there are expectations that everyone's like, okay, why aren't you making an arrest? More pressure on the FBI. Plus, it alerts the suspect that the walls are closing in, and then you've got to keep your eyes on the suspect because now you have evidence into the public that really points to guilt here. I mean, talk about consciousness of guilt. I don't remember what happened that night that she died. What do you mean you don't remember? Wouldn't that be something you would remember when the person, your stepsister who was sharing your small cabin, ends up dead and put under the bed, and you say, I don't remember anything? Well, that's bizarre. And the fact that the grandparents are talking, I'm sure that the FBI probably went back to the lawyers who are representing the family saying, not a good idea to talk to the press, because the FBI has all this information and they haven't made an arrest yet in this case, but that day is coming. And the more that the grandparents and others talked, it doesn't help the cause for the defendant, but also the FBI is also probably thinking, let's keep this buttoned up for now.
And we'll see what happens next. Just a very sad case, of course, also with the loss of a young girl, 18 years old, was about to graduate high school. Former Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Chris.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.